Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Tim Hayes, and this is MindShifter Radio on whatever the day this is. This is Wednesday, December 14th, 2016, and we're thrilled to have everyone here who is available to be here and listening to us as we work to share the ancient Aramaic tool of forgiveness. Today being a Wednesday, it's also Recovery Wednesday, as Michael has deemed to call this for now. And Recovery Wednesday is a time when we talk about how there's a crossover and a tremendous positive synergy that can happen when we combine the 12-step tools, the program of the 12 steps that began with Alcoholics Anonymous and now has expanded to a wide range of 12-step programs to help people live a life that is focused, that is productive, that is able to help us recover in each moment our awareness of our true nature as the energy of love and creation, and help us cultivate a practice or a series of practices which allow us to become a conduit for the presence of love in the world day in and day out. And the set of tools that Michael and Jeannie has made available to us is available on the website at www.whyagain.org. And if you click on the link that says Start Here in the upper left-hand corner or on the red and white bullseye in the center of the page, it'll take you to a page where you can download Chapter 24 of Dr. Ryce's book. The entire book is also available for download, but Chapter 24 of that book is a description of how the reality management wake-up sheet or worksheet process embodies the ancient Aramaic art of forgiveness, which is a tool for going inside myself and removing anything that's less than love, anything that doesn't belong in my system. And that's written as a dialogue between Dr. Ryce and a fictitious character named Richard. So you can download that chapter of his book and read about the theory behind this process and how it actually works. You can also download the latest version of the 7-step reality management worksheet or wake-up sheet process. And you can download, and it's highly recommended that you download and listen to an entire series of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have called in with their problems and asked questions, and actually in many of the cases of those 16 hours of shows, they've been stepped through a worksheet process. So those 16 hours can serve as an instructional audio package for understanding not just what this process is, but actually how to apply it in a variety of different situations, in a variety of different people's lives, real people with real problems who've called in and said, I'm stuck, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I've got physical pain, emotional pain, I have financial issues. And one by one, as you listen to those shows, you can gain a deeper insight on a variety of different issues about how this forgiveness process can be used to create a sense of peace and calm within oneself, even when nothing on the outside has changed, even when all of those things that I thought were causing my upset remain in place and in effect. I can demonstrate to myself with the use of this tool that I'm able to restore myself to a loving, peaceful, gentle, creative, joyful, comfortable state of being, even when everything remains the same in my outside world, even when the things that I thought a half an hour ago were the very cause of the upset I was feeling, and they stay the same with the application of this tool, the ancient Aramaic art of forgiveness. I'm able to change my inner state. I'm able to demonstrate to myself that it's all an inside job. And when I do that, especially in the presence of life situations that most people would interpret as negative or tragic or upsetting, I get a rare opportunity. I get the opportunity to be the space for total, perfect, conscious, active, present love to show up in the world in that moment. Some people are familiar with Abraham Hicks. Esther Hicks does a series of channelings, and there have been books written. And some of the people on the planet who are spiritual teachers have said, this is some of the most clear, concise, powerful teaching on the planet today. And Abraham says, we in physical form on this planet today are the leading edge of creation. And with the application of a tool like the Reality Management Worksheet, I have the opportunity to be here at the leading edge of creation and be a place where total, perfect, conscious, active, present love can show up in the midst of anger, in the midst of confusion, in the midst of physical pain, in the midst of the death of a loved one. And that's what we're offering with this set of tools. The primary tool in this work is the Reality Management Worksheet or Wake Up Sheet, and it's based upon the realization that my experience of life in every moment is being created by the perceptions I'm generating. My experience of life in each moment is created by what I choose to focus my mind energy on. And my mind energy is a creative force. Michael likes to quote what he learned from the ancient Khabouris manuscript, which is the oldest known copy of the New Testament. And Michael was in charge of a foundation that was instructed to translate it directly from the ancient Aramaic into English. And one of the things that team of translators came up with was that in the beginning of the book of John, it said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. Now, the Greeks translated it as the Word, and then it came down from the Greeks to the King James Version of the Bible as the Word. And if you ask scholars of the ancient Aramaic, the true practical spiritual academic scholars, they will tell you, people like Dale Allen Hoffman will tell you, one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult word to translate from the ancient Aramaic into English is the word. What did they mean? What concept, what series of sounds and concepts in the ancient Aramaic were they referring to when they were talking about at the beginning of creation? And the Greeks narrowed it down to this phrase, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. Well, Dale Allen Hoffman says, he says it this way, he says, the Word of God is not what's written in a Bible. He said, the Word of God is what grows your fingernails. It's what allows you to have breath. It's what has given rise to the trees and the planets. It's an energetic, experiential state of being that goes beyond our vocabulary. It goes beyond what my conscious logical mind could track and perceive and label. And so the Word being this huge concept, the translating team for the ancient Khabouris manuscript came up with a phrase that they think is much more accurate, and they said, In the beginning was the mind energy. And the mind energy, the actual energy of consciousness, the actual energy of awareness and consciousness itself, that's what became flesh. That's what became solidified, energy solidified and slowed to the point where it could be perceived by the senses. And, thousands of years later, Albert Einstein comes to the conclusion that when we've been talking about matter, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is simply energy. Energy whose vibration has been so slowed as to become perceptible to the senses. There is no matter, it is all energy. And so in the ancient Aramaic, this New Testament, this spiritual teaching that goes probably thousands of years before the New Testament was written, they had the knowledge that mind energy, which is a unique tool of human beings, mind energy itself is a creative force. And since every human being is originating mind energy, every human being is always creating. And one of the most powerful things we create moment to moment is our emotional experience of life in that moment. And one of the things we're offering with this tool is that if you find yourself, if I find myself, if anybody finds themselves in a situation where they don't like what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're perceiving, what they're feeling emotionally, they can apply a tool like the reality management worksheet or wake-up sheet. They can apply that tool to their thoughts, to their emotional energy, to their physical energy in that moment, and they can become more aware. They can become more present in the moment. They can move their awareness to their breath, to the energy, to the motion of energy which connects the spiritual entity and awareness to this thing we're calling a physical energy system. And in that moment, if I shift my awareness to my true nature, to that energy of creation, to that mind energy of the one ultimate mind that's holding the planets in position, that's allowing the ducks to fly and the wind to move, everything that's less than that energy becomes integrated and shifted. And I can be in that moment a conduit for that creative energy, for the awareness of total, perfect, conscious, active, present love to show up in the moment, in my life and in the lives of anyone else who has the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So I just heard a click. Does that mean, Michelle, you were able to get on the phone?
Oh, yeah. No, I was yelling out to you, Wednesday, it's Wednesday. But I'm enjoying your intro. Top Cap, I wrote it out and put it in the chat room for now.
So were you able to open up the switchboard?
Oh, yeah, no. It was just like spinning for like 4 minutes. And I don't, I finally decided, I don't know if I'm competing with other log-on people, but what have you.
Well, it was the same thing here. So they've been having difficulty. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. I did do the intro, and I did talk about the date, and I did mention that today is Recovery Wednesday. So I'll take a breath and see if anyone has a hand up or if Gail's available to spin us off into the blending of these tools with the 12-step work.
Yes. I am available, and I heard the unmute, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Fantastic. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to have this conversation with you and Michelle today. And I do have a spinning. And I was hoping that Michelle would be on the show today as well, that I could include her in on this. With Michelle's permission, I'd like to talk about the conversation that we had, I think a week ago, with the other lady. I don't have her permission, and I'm not sure you do either, so we will leave her name out of it. But Michelle and another lady called to ask me a 12-step question, and that was an honor and a privilege to be able to participate in that conversation. And one of the things that was brought up towards the end of the conversation was Michelle had mentioned, I can't believe that her experience was contrary to my experience in that we go through the 12 steps very quickly. And also, was I standing in the wrong place in my house? Did I go out?
No, can you continue on, Gail? You're fine. I wasn't sure where you were going, what aspects of it.
Oh, yeah. You were just like, oh, my God, this person is on, the person that we were talking to was on her 4th step, and she had a 4th-step question. And the 4th step is we took a fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and she had a 4th-step question, and you were amazed that she was on her 4th step and already.
In my experience, Dr. Kim, people take a couple months with each of the beginning steps, and so they might not be ready. And maybe this is residential treatment versus someone, who are just deciding to be healthier and maybe doesn't have a dependency on their substance. But the point being is that, maybe they're not ready to, tackle emotionally amends, so that doesn't happen until the vitality is higher, maybe 2, 3, 6 months down the road.
Absolutely. And I was, my experience, especially lately, is that I've been taking people through the steps pretty rapidly. And also, my first meeting with somebody new that I sponsor is usually a meeting of going through the first 3 steps. And that takes about 3 hours tops, and then getting them started on their 4th step immediately. And then I break down the 4th step into 17 different components of what we look at, and then I give them a week per component. And so 17 weeks to get through the 4th step, a day to get through the 5th step, and usually the rest of the steps are pretty fast. And it also talks about that in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the phrases that they use is that we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. And then at the end of a step, when they're given directions about the steps, they say faith without works is dead. We have to continue on. Or they'll say something to the effect of, you made an agreement to do whatever it takes to get over drinking, so we need to go to the next step. And so there's this constant urging to hey, not stop here, but to continue to go. And also in Bill Wilson's story, he talks about going through the steps very quickly as well. Of course, they weren't the steps at that time. They were the Oxford Group tenets, but he went through it very rapidly. And so my thinking now is that we need to have a change of consciousness as quickly as possible. Our thinking needs to change in order for our feelings to change, so we don't have to put the chemicals in our bodies to change how we feel. And so that's my thinking, and that's what I do. And I'd also like to correlate that with Aramaic, the Aramaic forgiveness process as well. There is a sense of urgency to get people to do wake-up sheets as quickly as possible and to be able to support them through all the emotional changes. So I would just like to hear a conversation about that. And then I have another question, but I would like to wait for your responses to that question first.
Michelle?
Okay, but you're saying the question's for me, Gail? Gail?
All right, well...
okay, I thought I was hitting the mute button, but the question was for both of you. it was just a conversation to see what your sense is in doing, both spiritual modalities and, it's for both of you. It's just a conversation.
Comments,
Go ahead,
Michelle?
Kelly.
All right. So my thought is that, yes, the sooner the better for anything that will move me into that awareness of my true nature and out of the conflict and the spin. So the people I know who are most successful with the 12 steps are the ones who are doing the steps soon and often. And they're doing them quickly, and they're repeating them over and over and over again. And each time they go through them, they learn another deeper level. Just like every time I do a worksheet process or a mind shifter, I learn more about my own unconscious processes, which I've been actively working to hide from myself, because I've drawn a false conclusion that there's something that could hurt me in my unconscious. So I would agree to move through them as quickly as possible because it's never done. So I'm going to go through the 12 steps, and I'm going to go through them again and again and again, just like I'm never done doing worksheets. I'm going to do the worksheets. I'm going to do a mind shifter journaling, and then I'm going to do more the next time I get triggered. And hopefully, if I'm really committed, I'll be doing something every day to change my awareness from the anger and the fear and the confusion to my awareness of my true nature as an energy of creation and as a product of the love of creation. And when I do that, I relieve that stress that would push me toward an escape or a drug or a behavior that numbs me out to the discomfort. So yes, I would agree. Soon and often.
Awesome, and I'm grateful that you also added we're never done with the 12 steps either. I mean, we are never done. Some people think, hey, I get through the 12 steps, I'm done, I've graduated, and that's not the case at all. Matter of fact, I always say that as soon as you learn a step, it starts to become an everyday step. And we may go back through it again and formally study it again, but hopefully this becomes, when you learn this, it becomes an everyday process for you. And then you keep trying to, not trying, but you keep fine-tuning this tool, just like you would the wake-up sheet and other tools that we use in the Aramaic forgiveness process as well. So, yes.
Yeah, there's kind of a conflict that shows up when we say, to get through the 12 steps, because the word through in that context for many people implies finishing, to being done with something. And the essence of any true spiritual work is to understand that it's a process, and it's not a destination. It's not an accomplishment. It's every bit as much of an everlasting thing to my life as is my breath. I need to approach any spiritual awakening, any tool to help with that, the way I would approach my breath. Would I think, boy, just 5 more breaths and I'll be done and I won't have to breathe again? So that's how I would approach that.
Absolutely. Michelle, did you have any comments on, or?
I think the philosophy in terms of taking time comes from people who maybe are new to the program and thinks that, like they maybe their urges and cravings will all disappear if they get to the 12th step, and that in order to avoid people just rushing through the steps to like fake it till you make it and not really authentically, let's say step 3, surrendering to God, that make sure that people are fully integrated and like have faith and maybe aren't just giving the lip service of it, but that, yeah, I'm powerless. Like I know that like is a huge one for people to concede the powerlessness that they have to substance, and they can't even seem to make it past that first step, and then thinking to go through like those first three in an afternoon and a pot of coffee. It just is just different to me, and not that it sounds like there's lots of good reasons that could support it from what you and Tim are saying. And I do like the idea about urgency, because it does feel like there is generally a quickening. A lot of people, it does feel like even in the clinical room that there's more issues and things moving faster and more like upheavals, more like churning like the sediment and kind of bringing stuff up for review and kind of restructure. So that's to understand where I'm coming from when we originally had talked about it, that like, wow, that's a lot different than the people I'm connected with and how they approach it. And I mean, I guess too, it depends what level of readiness you are. I guess if you're ready, maybe you can, knocking them out isn't a.
Well, remember,
like
Michelle,
long negotiated.
Remember, Michelle, it's not knocking them out. It's working through them, being introduced to them, and thinking of it in terms of it's just the first time through. It's like having a batting practice for somebody who's never held a bat before. We'll have the whole batting practice, and we'll put them up there in front of the ball being pitched. It doesn't mean that's they're going to master it in that routine, but run through the steps, get introduced to them, know you're going to come back over and over and over again. These are tools you're learning. You wouldn't think of a carpenter who learns to use a hammer and then never has to pick up a hammer again. The tools, the 12 steps, the reality management wake-up sheets, and every tool on Michael's and Jeannie's website is something to be used every day, to make a commitment, to cultivate the skill. And so it's not, let me knock this out, it's let me get introduced to this. Let me understand the beginnings of what this might do for me. Because if I get started, I'm on a path that will be my journey. Let me get started on that journey. Let me find out what the tools are on that journey. It's not that once I learn what the tools are, I've mastered them or I finish using them. So if you think about it in that way, I think it helps make more sense to get people moving through the tools, just like, on a regular basis, people come to the MindShifters groups for the first time. They see that the shortened version, the reality management worksheet that's now down from 12 steps down to 7 steps, which is supposed to be so much more easy and understandable. Well, there's, 3 or 4 inches at the bottom of the page that's fine print glossary just to explain the words that are on 3/4 of the page, which are, fine print and squeezed in. And so for a lot of people, that seems ridiculous. It could take 5 weeks just to explain what's on the worksheet. And yet, when people come, if they're willing, we, in their first session, will step them through the entire worksheet process. But it may take them a couple of years to actually understand everything that's being offered in that one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So that would be my offering. Thoughts, Gail, Michelle, Fred, Larry, anybody who's there?
I'm grateful for the validation of that thought process, that we're never finished. We need to keep going. We need to keep going to the next layer, whatever layer that is, and whatever comes up, and use whatever tools at our disposal in order to get through those layers and to clear up our unconscious mind and components and to recover our human lives and to live as love. So that is awesome. My next thing is the next question, and this is a pretty heavy-duty one, is that I have started sponsoring 2 women, and they're both on their inventory, and they have come up. Of course, when you're doing your inventory, and the inventory is a fearless moral inventory of ourselves, so that's our step 4. It could bring up a lot of stuff that we're doing, and the 4 components that we look at during the 4th step is resentments, our fears, our sex conduct, and harms done to others. And that breaks down into the 17 components that I talked about earlier. One of the biggest things that we look at is sex conduct, because if you take sex conduct and self-centered fear and combine those 2, we come up with pretty volatile emotions that we want to cover up with chemicals, to put in our body to change how we think. One of the consequences for women when they're in self-centered fear and sex conduct is something that is very controversial in the political arena right now is abortion. And both of these women have had abortions. I have sponsored other women that have had abortions. And that's a big thing that women drink over, is that shame that put them in that position to have to choose, and then making that choice. And also the choice of what the after effects, the shame, guilt, remorse. And all the women that I sponsor right now have been victims of some sort of childhood sexual abuse. And of course, one of the symptoms of childhood sexual abuse is inappropriate attention seeking from men that put them either in the position to procreate. And so that not only do we need to look at the fact that they had abortions, but also the inappropriate behavior that led to having to make that choice. And so I was wondering, I know how to go through this in the 12-step model to help get rid of that guilt, shame, and remorse so they don't have to drink again. I've also listened to Carolyn Mays talk about this because this choice is about the sacral chakra and how it affects the sacral chakra, and she has some really good information about that, releasing that. I was just wondering, I'd like to have a conversation to see how you would approach that, because both of these women have been introduced to the Aramaic as well as working the 12 steps. So I was wondering what your approach would be to tackle that.
Oh, well, specifically, my approach to tackle what?
To tackle the guilt, shame, and remorse that comes with making that type of choice. How would you suggest starting a work?
Well, it's all the same process. So whenever somebody comes up and says, well, but how would you use it for this and how would you use it for that? Michael says, all of the above. Because it doesn't matter whether I thought about killing a mouse, or I actually killed a mouse, or I killed a mouse with, a long, slow, torturous routine, or I thought about stealing a candy bar, or I actually stole a candy bar, or I thought about cheating on my partner, or I actually cheated on my partner. Now here we are, 5 days, 5 hours, 5 decades later. The only place that energy is alive in the universe is in my mind-body energy system. And, there are some wonderful treatments of this dynamic in Robert Smith's faster EFT tapping. He's quite well versed in some of the old alternative hypnosis techniques and therapy techniques that understand we literally keep reliving these energies by denial and suppression and from having them locked down in our energy system. But the fact of the matter is, if I was in Vietnam and I was involved in the ending of some human lives, and here I am 40 years later, the only place in the universe that's still happening is in my mind when I bring up the memory. So when you say people having guilt and remorse over something they did yesterday or last night or 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago, as in some of the people who had some of these events in their life that they've labeled as tragic or labeled as immoral or labeled as, devastating or life-condemning, the only place in the world that energy is alive right now is in their mind and body. So the same process applies. I forget who it was, somebody, I think in June, somebody called in from North Carolina and they wanted to do a worksheet on somebody who was already dead. And she wanted to know how she would do it. And I had the same response then, the same way you would for somebody who's in the next room or who's in your face screaming at you right now. The worksheet isn't about the other person. The worksheet's about the energy I'm carrying that I'm continually bringing back to life by activating the memory, by judging myself negatively for having done it. And the point of this work is that I can't be focusing my conscious awareness on my true nature as the energy of love and creation in this moment, and at the same time focusing my thoughts on guilt and shame and blame and beating myself up and judging myself negatively. I can't do both. So the way to work with that is the same regardless of the event and regardless of the process and regardless of how long ago it happened, regardless of who I think I hurt. I'm in the moment now. I'm having a discomfort. I've decided to use a tool, whether I'm using the breath work or I'm using the 12 steps or I'm using the reality management worksheet. I start with where I am right in that moment. And so for some people, it's as simple as, I want to feel better right now. I want to quit beating myself up. So there's my goal. I want to feel better. Or there's my goal. I want to treat myself lovingly. And then I would identify the emotion I'm feeling right now and the thought I'm using to create that emotion and the goal to treat myself lovingly, cancel that and ask to be shown. When I put myself in that mindset, what's happening in the worksheet process is I'm letting myself activate the conscious logical mind, which is using its belief about the world and its goals to tap into my unconscious and my painful energies and create a perception in my mind that is false. By definition, it's false because I don't like how it feels. It's false by definition because it's less than joyful, it's less than creative, it's less than loving, it's less than abundant. And I'm creating it with my conscious thoughts and my goals, which are tapping into the traumas and false beliefs from my past, and literally using them to generate my perception of myself and the world around me in that moment. So when I do that process, I literally stir up and re-energize the neural pathways, and they aren't just neural pathways in my brain, they're actually neural pathways in my body. And when I let myself feel that, without resistance, with total acceptance, I let myself feel it and dive into it and make my home in the breath while that's happening and just notice it happening. I create this thing that in coherence therapy they call this memory reconsolidation, this window of opening where during that next period of time, I can actually spill off some of those energies. I can actually create different neurological links. I can actually clean out some of the connections between file folders in my mind so that I spill off the energies that are false, that are built on the false conclusions that I'm a bad person, or I can never be saved, or I could never be forgiven for this, or that no one could ever love me, etc. I can spill off the energies in my energy system connected to those links, those connections, the file folders that have been linked, or the neurons that have fired together that then wire together. I can actually change that when I let myself realize I'm the only one in the universe who's bringing this back to life right now, and it's only happening energetically in my system. And then I ask to be shown, okay, what's the part of my mind, what's my file folder system, what are the links and beliefs in my mind that my mind, my unconscious, is using to create my pain in this moment? And then it opens a space for me to see it and feel it even more deeply. And if I'm simply willing to go there and breathe through it, my awareness that my breath keeps coming, I can feel the pain, the sadness, the fear, whatever the negative emotion was, and tap into my awareness that it's a miracle of life that I'm here at all, that I have this nearly 100 trillion cells working together in concert, each with their own unique intelligence. It's far beyond my capacity as a conscious, logical person to even begin to understand. If I can step back to that space of wonder, tap into my awareness that there's far more going on in the world of creation than I could initiate or be responsible for, and ask to be taught in that moment from something larger than myself, that's what does the healing. It's not me. It's not my willingness. It's this combination of my willingness interacting with the true nature of creation and my getting what I thought was me, my negative beliefs about myself, getting them out of the way long enough that that positive energy can come in and transmute what's less than it. So, many of the people that I deal with have had, multiple deaths in their families that they thought they were responsible for, multiple abortions that happened at 16 or 18 or 22, multiple rapes, and what happens when you apply a tool like this is the past stays in the past, and I'm able to break the cycle in my own mind-body energy system of bringing it back to life and pretending it's true now. And when I break that cycle, simply by holding love, conscious, active, and present, when something less than it comes up, I get a whole different perspective. So a recent example that just came to my mind 3 times while I was talking is a woman I'm dealing with who's probably 50 years old, maybe 45, I don't know, but she's no longer a teenager, and she's coming in, and she was very upset because of the results in the election that resonated all of this upset. And so she was coming in for some work, and one of the first things that came up was that she was raped when she was 16. And the download in her mind from that experience was, she's weak. Well, as we were doing the energy work, the goal canceling, the restoration of awareness of love, and she went back to experience this and just let it come up and just watch what her mind wanted to show her, she remembered a sexual abuse incident that happened when she was 18. The difference is, this time, every time in her life, from the age of 16 through 18 through 22 when another incident happened, she use the filter in her mind that she created when she was 16 that said she was weak and she was helpless and she somehow brought this first rape on herself. She used that same filter every time she thought about that for the past 20 or 30 years until this past few weeks. And now, when she went back, she realized that the event that happened at 18, it didn't go anywhere near as far because she stopped it and she got herself out of that situation and she never went back. And so in my office, she had a shift in perspective that for the first time ever she saw that what she did at 18 was from a position of strength. And then she began to reevaluate her position at 16. And then it opened a window for her to see herself differently when an event happened when she was 22, and this was in the workplace. And then she began to see, oh, wait a minute, when it happened in the workplace and I spoke up and it went to court and I won the case, even though it was brutal, that was evidence of a strength that she never let herself see. So all the same data points exist in her life today as they have ever since she was 16 and 18 and 22, but now because she's done the work, now because she's asked to be shown how she's creating her own upset, now she can look at it and interpret those data points differently. And she's walking around today, just a couple weeks after doing some of this worksheet process, doing some of this asking to be shown, letting herself go back and remember some of the traumas while remembering it's not happening to her now, it's only a memory. She has an entirely different view of herself. She carries herself differently. And nothing changed about her past. That's the process of this work. The only thing that's happening in a person who's feeling shame or guilt right now is that they are generating shame and guilt. It's not being done to them. And the tools allow me to see that I'm doing it to myself and interrupt that pattern in a way that allows the extension of love, the expression of my true nature and my purpose for being on the planet to come into fruition right now. So I'll take a breath and see if I got too far off track or if I answered anything that is relevant for you.
That was perfect for me because you took it to the foundation. You took it to, the very beginnings and why we do what we do in this work and the object, the objective meaning of what we're doing. So I thank you for everything that you said and how you presented it and how you just started at the very beginning and made it very fundamental and broke it down the way you did. So yeah, I don't think you got way off track at all. I think that was perfect. That's exactly what I needed to hear.
All right. Well, glad to hear it. I mean, as you were just saying that, this quote came to mind. The quote is this, and watch what comes up, because a lot of times when I say this, people get hung up on the first part of it and they have a negative reaction and they never hear the second part. But the quote that I really liked was, your past has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with who you are. It has only to do with who you thought you were.
That makes sense. And thank you for the warning, because I think I would have had the same prejudice as well. I think I would have started fighting in my mind. And I wouldn't have listened to the last part of that. But yeah, I agree, and I could see where that would be true. And yeah, absolutely. So thank you for including that, and thank you for, like I said, the warning as well.
You're very welcome and deserving. Is there anything else we can help you with around that set of questions?
I'm good. I'm complete. And I'm complete and very grateful. I'm grateful for your time and your expertise and your knowledge and the way you break down concepts and present them on the show. So I am complete. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Michelle, questions, comments, additions?
Well, in the chat room, Donna says, great response, Dr. Tim. So, and a little bouquet of flowers and a smile. So thank you for that, and I let her know. I had a client yesterday, he was about 20 years old, and he was talking about being bullied in middle school and how he has so much resentment towards himself related to his inability to stand up for himself. So some of the things you were saying was resonating that because we had a whole discussion. I like to say, like, when's the expiration date on that? As far as this event happened over 10 years ago during the one, 7th grade school year, what have you. And here he's, served a tour of duty in the military and is in college, and it's just like it's yesterday. So actually, I think the last maybe 15 minutes of the show yesterday, we're talking about a similar vein in terms of dismantling, the perceptions and the beliefs that define us. So it's a conversation that continues to, need reinforcing and reminding and work to integrate all those changes.
All right. Well, I am grateful for the tools, and as we were talking about yesterday, I continue to see the benefits of the practice and active practice, the cultivation of my skill with the tools that yields loving benefits in my life. So I heartily recommend visiting the website at www.whyagain.org and printing off the worksheet and putting the pen to the paper, as David Hayes used to say. And what I like to add to what David would say is be gentle with yourself. Sylvia Boorstein would say, put your hand over your heart, take a few deep breaths, talk to yourself the way you would a wounded child, and say, sweetheart, you're in pain. Take a few deep breaths. Then we'll look at what's going on, and then we'll decide what to do. I've had several people in the past few days who are very, very actively beating themselves up mentally or emotionally because they haven't done as many worksheets as they wanted, because they weren't able to get the worksheets to turn out the way they wanted. And my favorite response to that, the most useful response I've learned to that, is when I catch myself being negative toward myself in my thoughts or my emotions, and certainly in my actions. Take a few deep breaths and be gentle with myself. Matt Kahn would take it a step further and say, whatever arises in your mind, whatever arises in your life, love that. Send love to the part of you that wants to beat up another part of you or judge you negatively for not being perfect. Realize that, as they talk about in the Way of Mastery, everything that you see and perceive coming from yourself or someone else is either the active extension of love in form or a cry for help and healing. There is only love or fear. And the active extension of love in form will create with it a sense of completion, a sense of connectedness, a sense of hope, a sense of creativity and joy, wholeness. And whenever those senses of wholeness are not present, what one is experiencing is a cry for help and healing. There is only one or the other. And in every moment when I'm interacting with someone else and I think they are not being loving, and it brings up in me the judgment that they're wrong, that in me, that tension in me, that judgment in me is the opposite of love in me. And that's a cry for help and healing in me. And that part of me that wants to angrily or bitterly or from a hurtful position judge another, that's a part of me that's crying for healing. And Matt Kahn would say, love that. And Sylvia Borstein would say, I should put my hand over my heart space and say, Timmy, sweetheart, you're in pain. Take a few deep breaths. Then we'll look at what's going on, and then we'll decide what to do. But right now, Timmy, sweetheart, you're in pain. And the essence of it is, I'm not designed to be in pain. Pain is my Geiger counter. It's a compass. It's a very useful set of information for me. And as such, it's a good thing for me to understand what it's there for and how I can use it to my advantage. My pain is not an indication that I'm right and someone else is wrong. Guy Finley likes to say, my pain is the absolute evidence of the fact that I don't know what rightness is. Because rightness will leave me feeling whole. True perception, as Michael talks about, leaves me seeing nothing but the energy of creation and love. And in Way of Mastery, he says, when you do this, when you purify your mind, when you return your breath, your consciousness to your breath, you will be able to perceive the energies coming from another, and you will be able to understand the roots and the motivations behind that from another, and you will look through it, and you will see the face of Christ before you. And if I'm looking from my eyes, and I see someone in pain or fear, and I'm not able to see the face of Christ, I'm not able to offer love and compassion, that's my work to do. That means I'm off the mark, and there's a part of me in need of help and healing. So thank you all for being here today. Apparently tomorrow we will be back. I don't know if Michelle will be running the switchboard, but I will be doing the show while Michael and Jeannie are traveling. Join us. Bring a friend. Share the show. Enjoy the archives, and have the best year yet of your eternal life. Thanks, everyone.